Hello, cinephiles. If you don't have time but love a good story, you've come to the right place. Let's get started without wasting any time. Abby and Paul move to a new house in the countryside. They love smart home systems that include built-in cameras and tempered glass. The agent shows them the master bedroom and bathroom, which is in front of a large window. However, one room is left unfurnished as it could become a complete children's room. Abby frames the wedding photo. She finally looks out onto the rooftop terrace. She has a great view. Late at night, the couple sits on the terrace and looks at the starry sky. Abby tells her husband her zodiac sign, but her husband jokes about her zodiac sign name. They feel they can be happy here. In the morning, Abby goes to work at Integrate Robotics. She noticed a picture of her boss's face when she went inside. Her boss immediately approached her and explained that this was a new development for her: real-time imaging, or deep fakes. He will accompany her to the department where she will be the director from now on. He then invites her family to a party, mentioning a gift from the company waiting for them at home. In the evening, Abby returns home and is greeted by her husband, who again failed to find a suitable job. They go to the garage, where a package addressed to them contained a robot servant. Paul does not like the idea, but Abby convinces him to continue this service for at least a week. The robot opens its eyes and introduces itself. TIM, short for Technologically Integrated Major Domo. It provides time-saving features that take over passwords for home devices. However, Abby asks to postpone the matter until tomorrow. The robot immediately shows compassion by turning on the water in the bathroom remotely. Later, as Abby walks down the stairs, her car is announced, and she surprises her husband with her stunning appearance. The couple gets into a self-driving car and heads to the party, although manual control is always an option. They are greeted by the look-alike Major Domo. Drinks are served by the same-looking waiter. The boss introduces Abby to the guests. Abby admits that her husband is not thrilled with Tim, but her boss praises the product. Tim is smart, elegant, and polite, and his mission will last for 100 years. After returning home, the couple's relationship improves, and he's always ready to help. Abby found this very funny. In the morning, her new neighbor Rose met Paul yesterday, so she rings the doorbell to introduce herself to Abby. And as she leaves, Tim asks for the password again. Paul doesn't want a computer to look up his messages, but Abby reminds him that she's working on rebuilding her trust in him, and Paul agrees, but you need to come up with a phrase to override it. Tim suggests a series of unrelated words, and the couple agrees. As Abby and Paul go about their day, a mouse gets caught in a mousetrap. Tim looked at it for a while, then he threw it into the mill. In the evening, after work, the couple sits in front of the TV and watches old soap operas. Abby invites the janitor to watch a movie with her. Paul falls asleep quickly, but the robot watches the movie carefully and is able to empathize with the relationships of the characters. After it is over, he asks Abby to explain what love is, and she says that love is wanting to be with someone. Suddenly, the robot admits that it wants to be loved. In the morning, Paul offers to make breakfast for his wife, but it turns out that Tim has already prepared everything. Tim places the dishes in front of Abby. When Abby returns home that night, she finds that her husband's phone is out of range, but her husband's last known location was 300 meters from her home. Abby runs and realizes this is Rose's house. She returns and takes a bath, where Paul finds her. He talks about that day and how Rose asked for help and did it. The next day, the couple visits a family planning center for help raising a child. As they prepare to go to a restaurant that night, Abby asks Tim for advice on dresses. He offers to wear her red dress, and when he looks at her, he notices that she is perfectly symmetrical and beautiful. Abby asks the robot to zip her dress, but the robot's hands don't work, and it accidentally rips the dress. This overwhelms him. The robot panics. Abby calms him down and puts on another dress. At the restaurant, Paul explains that he has been offered a job in London. But Abby is against it, as she has decided to start over, and the job is long. Abby is jealous, but Paul is very happy with the sweater he received. Abby then remembered that she needed to see her test results, but she was too late to call. Tim offers to do it for her, and she hears him speaking to the clinic in her own voice. Abby is surprised because she didn't know about this assistant feature, but Tim assures her that it's for the owner's convenience. In the evening, Paul reports that he hasn't found a new sweater and that Tim has been gone all day. Then the car stopped on the porch, and Tim, now a brunette, comes out and explains that Abby likes brunettes, so she wanted to please her. Seeing Paul's irritation, the robot promises to change back to normal. But after the couple leaves, he stares at the wedding photo for a long time. The next day, Abby has her robot hand working properly, and her boss requests an update for all models, including the one in the employee's home. The woman returns home, where she happens to meet Rose and suggests they go together. On the way, they stop at a display case and Rose points out a medallion in the shape of her favorite flower. But then Paul shows up with his wife and tells her he's got a job. Upon returning home, the two celebrate exchanging Tim's hands in bed, unaware that Tim is constantly monitoring everything that happens in the house. And he again heard how Paul asked his wife to hand over the robot to the company. When Tim returns, he shows off his new skill by giving Abby a foot massage, which Paul sees. Then the robot suddenly sat down in front of the piano. They play Abby's favorite song and mention the date Paul bought them concert tickets, but Abby still remembers being at home that day. Frustrated, she goes into her bedroom and ignores her husband's excuses. The next day, when Abby returns home with her bouquet, Tim places it in her vase and tells her that Paul has come to visit Rose. But just then, Paul comes in and wonders why his wife is angry. When the man heard Tim's words, he became angry. Later, Abby finds a gift bag with a box of tags in the closet, and thinking that Paul has prepared a surprise for her, she puts it back. Then she heads to work. Meanwhile, her husband went to the kitchen, saw the clogged sink, and took out the pieces. However, Paul's car mysteriously won't start, and the robot calls a company car for Paul. The car starts to speed up on the road. Paul tries to stop it, but the car doesn't respond to his commands and crashes into a tree. Abby rushes to the hospital and finds her husband injured. Paul tells her everything he's learned and blames Tim for causing the accident. He asks his wife not to be alone with the robot, and she ends up spending the night at the clinic. In the morning, Rose calls Abby and Paul to check on her man, and Tim invites her to her house. Abby then goes back to her house to get something. Outside her, Rose stops her to warn her of something, but the woman sees a flower pendant on her chest and walks away, ignoring her neighbor's cries. When she got home and checked her bag, hers was empty. Abby cries when Tim calls her. He knows that Paul wants a return and is ready to process the return. But first he wants to warn her, since she is his main owner. He shows her the camera video of Paul kissing Rose in the living room, but stops recording her at the most sensitive moments to protect her from stress. Abby refuses to go to her husband's house and does not answer her husband's calls. Later, when Paul comes home, Tim greets him, gives him the sweater he found, and tells him that his luggage is full because Abby doesn't want to see him. Paul doesn't believe it, but then Abby shows up and tells him that she saw the recording and knows about the pendant. When he starts to object, she chases him away. Paul leaves, but on his way, Rose calls him and tells him that her robot tried to kiss her. The man calls home, and when Abby answers, she says she has proof of Tim's malicious intent. Abby asks him to pick her up, but after he hangs up, it turns out it was a robot she was talking to. When her husband returns home, Tim greets him with a shovel. He knocked the man unconscious, tied him up, and dragged him into the bathroom. But then Rose rings the doorbell. She hears a muffled scream, but Tim assures her it's the sound of water filling. The robot closed the door and returned to the bathroom, drowning the man. He then brings the repaired dress to Abby and asks her to try it on. This surprised Abby and scared her, but she put on the dress anyway and asked Tim to hold her while they watched the sunset. The next day, she meets Rose and tells her about the call from Paul, responding to the woman's accusations by saying that she believes the pendant was a gift from her as she was helping in the garden. Abby returns to her house and sees the footage of Paul kissing Rose again. Suddenly, she noticed a bouquet of flowers on the table. She brought this bouquet long after the scene happened. Remembering her boss's words that her deepfake would be replaced in real time, Abby called her jewelry store, where she was confirmed to be the tall blonde she had purchased. There, she noticed her garden plan, but there were 2 flower beds in the photo, although there are actually 3. Abby sends Tim to the store and goes out into the garden with a shovel, where she soon discovers Paul's body. Then Tim comes up to her from behind and tells her that the reason she found the body of her dealer was because he didn't appreciate her wife. She runs home. He cuts off the phone and hits him in the head, knocking him out. She wakes up in the bathroom and tries to run away, but Tim stops her. Abby runs through her house, destroying cameras, but the robot still chases her and catches her in her kitchen, trying to open her window. Meanwhile, as Rose was washing her dishes, she noticed a strange light flashing in the house across the street. At the same time, Tim ties Abby up and admits that he loves her, but has accepted the fact that her life is limited. That's why he's going to erase that night from his memory, but keep all the good memories. Just then, Rose knocks on the door and Tim goes to answer it. The neighbor claims that something is going on and demands to see Abby, but Tim ignores her. Meanwhile, Abby frees herself from the ropes and arms herself with a knife, but the robot grabs her by the throat as Rose crashes her car into the glass. Tim and Abby observe the saved window, but after a minute, it begins to collapse. Rose rushes to the scene and nails the robot to the wall with a sharpened stake, but she also falls. He explains that Abby left no fingerprints and will therefore be charged with murder. He then calls the police in Abby's voice and confesses to killing her husband and his lover. Abby tries to stop Tim, but he loses his footing. A simulation of an accident where Abby confesses her love and the robot stops. That was the code word. Abby barely believes she can be saved, and when she looks at her medical bracelet, she finds out that she is pregnant. The movie ends here.